What's up guys, Ryan here from Mud Gunner. Today I wanted to talk about my top 5 guns that I would potentially recommend to beginners. And this is just from my personal experience. So obviously everyone has their own opinion. If you ask 10 different people what guns they're going to recommend, you might get 10 different answers. So again, this is just going to be what I personally like recommending to people and my experiences with them. I shoot handguns fairly often. I'm not the biggest handgun guy. I would say I'm more of a rifle guy, but I do have a decent amount of experience with handguns. So let's get into it. My first recommendation is going to be very, original, not really, but it's got to be a Glock. So my very first handgun was a Glock 34, and Glock they're basically king of the world as far as handguns go. You can agree with that or not agree with that, it doesn't matter to me, but realistically, Glock is the most popular handgun, and out of the box, I would say I would trust a Glock more than most companies out of the box. Now, a lot of companies nowadays are pretty good, but Glock makes a very good pistol and a very reliable pistol. They don't try to reinvent the wheel every few years. They're kind of like an iPhone where they just change some of the features. You're buying the same thing, you just get different features. So this is a Glock 34 Gen 4. If you like to add a little bit of color, you can go Glock 19X. Now, I did change the barrel on this one, so I run it suppressed. It's got a Gemtech barrel in there. But yeah, Glock is the most recognizable pistol, I would say. It's got the most aftermarket support. So as far as cost goes, if you're a beginner, right? Pistol wise, you're gonna spend maybe $500 to $700 depending on what model you want. But as far as aftermarket support goes, it is absolutely amazing. You could do lights, barrels, holsters, optics, cuts, like cuts for optics, different sights, and relatively speaking, it's all gonna go pretty well. Now, the more you change on a gun, the less reliable you potentially make it. Like this Gemtech barrel works good in here suppressed, but then I swapped it to an Agency Arms barrel because it was gold and it matched the color. As soon as I did that, it made it a single shot gun. So when you change parts to aftermarket parts, you potentially make it unreliable. Just something to note, and that is with any brand. So when someone says, oh, my Glock sucks, or this person's Glock sucks, but they changed 5 of the parts to different companies, I mean, at some point, it's no longer Glock's problem or Glock's fault. You are changing parts that they don't use from Glock. So just something to know. I would say as far as talking mostly stock guns go, Glock is king in my opinion. And obviously I like stuff more than Glock. Like you can spend $1,000 and buy a cooler handgun than a Glock, but Glock is #1 as far as just overall pick. I have to say Glock, and I like Glock. I will still continue to shoot Glock. Currently carrying this 43. Now this is not an original Glock. This is a Langdon Tactical Glock 43. This one's chambered, so I'm not gonna mess with it too much, but I got a brick wall right here. So this is a Glock 43 and it was decked out by Langdon Tactical. So it's got aftermarket trigger. It was cut for an RMR CC. It's also got iron sights, like a rear sight in the RMR to line up with the front sight. And then I run Terran base pads. So not a factory Glock, but it's one that I like. And it's okay to change parts, like if you'd like. Just know that the more you change, the potential for problems do exist. So, but this was done by Langdon Tactical, and I trust their work. So yeah, Glock has got to be #1. You can disagree if you'd like, and that's okay. Like again, everyone has their own opinion. There's a lot of other great brands, and I have limited experience, but I do shoot a few handguns. So if you don't like Glock, but you like the idea of Glock, my recommendation for what I use the most would be my Shadow Systems. This one's also chambered, so I'm not gonna mess with it too much. But this is a Shadow Systems MR918. So this is their model before the 920 series. But I have 10,000 rounds on this gun, and it has never had any major malfunctions. Now, when you get 10,000 rounds to a gun, you're gonna have like some malfunctions here and there. That's like, anyone that says they don't, they're lying. But yeah, this gun overall has been my favorite handgun to shoot. Now, I don't have 10,000 rounds on every other gun because that's a lot of money and time to do, but this is just kind of what stuck with me a few years ago when I bought it, and I really enjoy it. It's all stock other than I put an RMR on there, which it was cut for from the factory. And when you run an RMR, you don't have to buy taller sights. A lot of handguns, when you put a red dot on there, you have to buy taller sights, but with an RMR on this specifically, I can use my irons and I can use the RMR. And then I added a Streamlight TLR1 HL. That's a very good light for most guns. It fits almost every full-size gun. And then this one's got a different base pad on the bottom of the mag. But other than that, all stock gun. And cosmetically speaking, they look a lot nicer. So this is their Elite model. They have a bunch of variations, but their Elite is like the most features on it. But it's not even that it's performance-wise. The Elite gives you this side cut right here. It gives you these top serrations. I think the combat models, the next model below that, it does not have the top serrations or the side cut. So you can pay for more cosmetic features from the factory, and it looks much nicer than a Glock. You know, aesthetically speaking, like if it's your first handgun, looks shouldn't be what you go for. You should go for a quality gun that's going to serve you well. But if you want something a little bit nicer than a Glock, I would say Shadow Systems. And we're at a point, my girlfriend, she bought this herself. This is her Shadow Systems. This is the DR920 Elite. So it's a Glock 17 size. Mine is a Glock 19 size. But it's an all black gun, but it just looks cosmetically much nicer. And honestly, I like them more out of the box than a Glock because I think, again, I think a lot of people's complaints with Glock is the grip angle, but it was my first handgun. So I just learned it and work with it very well. I think the Shadow Systems feels really good. I like the no finger grooves. I like their stipple job, or their grip from the factory. So many people try to stipple a Glock to make it better, and a lot of people mess them up. I'm not saying everyone does, but I wouldn't buy a gun just with the intent of stippling it. Like, just shoot it the way it is, get good with it, and then do all the fancy stuff. But again, their grip out of the box is very nice, and I would say this to me is nicer out of the box than a Glock. But I know some people have had issues with Shadow Systems. I personally have not. I've never had anything that I would say is a negative experience with it. But yeah, I really like it. Again, this is my girlfriend. She bought it all on her own, and she runs it pretty well. And then as far as other ones go, right, like there's not necessarily a particular order. My first main concealed carry gun was a Smith & Wesson. This one is chambered, so I'm not going to mess with it too much. This is a Smith & Wesson Shield. It's a Gen 1, holds 8 rounds. And I did do upgrades to this one, so it has an aftermarket trigger. It's got an Apex trigger, which at the time for Smith & Wesson, their triggers weren't the greatest. I would say that was a major upgrade. And then I got Trijicon HD night sights on here. Night sights make very good for concealed carry guns. I don't have a light, but yeah, this was my concealed carry gun for about the last 7 years, and I'm not getting rid of it. It's just I've kind of stepped up to the Glock 43 Langdon Tactical. This one has a red dot. At some point, I think what I'd like to do is the Shadow Systems CR920 with a Streamlight TLR7 sub on there, because I would like to add a red dot to my main concealed carry guns. I do concealed carry this sometimes, especially during winter when I can wear a jacket. But yeah, this shield probably has, if I had to guess, like 4,000 rounds on it, which is a lot for a 8-round 9mm. And I really enjoy this. I'll never get rid of it. As far as just a out of the box gun, their M&P series. Now this is a Gen 1. I would recommend the 2.0, and I like the 2.0 more than the SD series, their SD9 or SD40. They do have the Gen 2 out now, which has a better trigger. My main complaint with the SD series was the trigger and parts availability, but the M&P series is like their version of a Glock. This one's pretty cool. It's a Detroit PD model, or not model, but this was a Detroit PD gun, which is pretty cool. It's a 40 cal, which is not the greatest. I could see why they got rid of it. But yeah, M&P 9s are good, and I do have an M&P 9. It's just this one's not all factory. So this one is the Core series, or the Pro Series Core. So this was like their Gucci gun out of the box. Comes stippled on the back straps, and then I bought this one used. The person before me had it stippled on the front. They put a Wilson Combat barrel on there, and then this one did have taller sights from the factory to run an RMR. So I'm running an RMR and an Apex trigger on here. So it's not a factory gun, but very nice. All the Smith & Wesson 2.0s come with like an Apex style trigger now, which I think is very cool. And even if they still have like that hinge trigger, just like the curved hinge trigger like this, the trigger weight on them has gotten much better over the years. So I really like that. Again, Smith & Wesson was my first main concealed carry gun as far as my shield goes, but my Glock 34 was my first handgun. And the next two options are going to be like if you want a slightly higher end gun or potential of higher end gun, I'm going to do this one first. This is an HK. And next one I'll talk about is Sig, but this is my VP9. It's stock other than the barrel is a Silencer Co. barrel for running a suppressor, and then this one's got a metal magwell, but triggers the stock. The sights are the factory night sights. So if you do like an HK pistol, I do like their LE models, which normally means they come with 3 mags instead of 2, and they come with night sights. And out of the box, I always thought this felt a little better than Glocks or whatnot. Trigger pull on them is very light out of the box, which is very cool. I like their finger grooves. This one has their paddle mag release. So this is very left-hand friendly because it's got an ambi slide lock. It's got an ambi mag release. A lot of guns 7-ish years ago didn't have that. Glock didn't have that. Smith & Wesson didn't have that. So HK at the time was very much, the left-hand friendly gun. And I really like it. With stuff like this, they've gone up and down in price. Like there's times where HK pistols are close to $1,000. Right now, they're at one of the lowest. Like you can get VP9s for like $500 used, which I think is a pretty good deal because long time, I would say like 6 or 7 years ago, they were like $800. Right now, new, they're $600 to $700, but they're always running deals on them right now. And I bought this at a time where when you bought it, you got 4 extra mags. So I had the 3 factory mags and then 4 extra mags as their magazine promo deal. So I got 7 mags, and those mags are like $45 a piece. So VP9 is a really good option. And if you don't like the striker fire guns, I'm a big fan of striker fire. I think that's a very good first handgun for everyone. But if you don't like striker fire, they do have the USP9 here. This is a classic. They make this in 9, 40, 45. These are still expensive. They're about $1,000. And then I like their P30 series, which is like, this is a HK45, but their P30 series or the HK45 still has the finger grooves and like this style grip, hammer fired, and this one's cool. It's a 45. I run it suppressed. And these are guns I really like running them stock. They're very nice. So this one's hammer fired. It's got a safety and a decocker. But yeah, HK makes a very good pistol, and I would say I don't hear them talked about as much. I mean, they're still a well-known company. Like, they make amazing guns. I love their MP5 and whatnot, and they make cool rifles, but their pricing over the years has gotten more affordable. They used to be very out of reach for beginners, but now the VP9 at least is very much an affordable gun in my opinion. And when I say affordable, I do mean like $500 to $700. If you want, cheaper than that, you can get anything used. Like, most of what I buy is used. You can get, again, used HKs for $500. You can get used Glocks or Smith & Wessons for $400. So the pricing's out there. If all you can afford is like $200 to $300, I would say your options right now would be, I mean, I don't like Taurus for myself, but we sell a lot of Taurus at our store, and they do seem decent. It's just they've had so many lawsuits over the years, but right now the Taurus G2Cs and the G3Cs, or like even just the G3, those seem decent. But again, they've had a lot of lawsuits over the years, and so I don't have any experience firsthand with like owning them. My final one is going to be Sig, and Sig is kind of hit or miss for me because I like them. I like their guns, but they're also one of the absolute worst as far as quality control goes and customer service. So I recommend them, but to a certain extent. So this is a Sig M17. Watch, if I let this slide forward, it probably won't even go all the way into battery. Oh, it did. So my issue with this, right now it's out of battery. The M17 specific model, now I don't mean 320. This is not actually a normal 320. It's not stamped 320 anywhere on the gun. This is an M17 commemorative, so this is actually their military pistol. They only did 5,000 of these. It's built slightly different than a 320, but other than that, it's basically a 320. It's got a different system, so this thing basically runs off of plus P ammo or 124 grain NATO ammo. It's built a little different. If I shoot 115 grain through here, it's going to end up like this every single time, and I have to push it forward. Very annoying. It will have a break-in period, but I don't shoot this one as much since it's a 1 of 5,000 gun, so it's not truly broken in, but you see it's not all the way in battery. But yeah, if I shoot 115 grain ammo, it doesn't always go forward. So the 320, I think, is a cool gun, but I've seen a lot of people have issues with them. My other gripe with Sig is I've bought a lot of their guns, their rifles, their pistols. I'm allowed to talk a little bit of crap because I have a lot of money invested in them. Someone does not know how to put sights on at Sig, so I have a Sig Spartan 1911. Those sights were off, had to get them adjusted. My girlfriend has a Sig Rose 365 XL. Those sights were off and had to get them adjusted. 2 weeks ago, I sold a customer the Sig Rose XL with a Romeo Zero. Took it to a course the next day. That gun shop called our store and said that Romeo Zero is like non-functioning, like they can't adjust it, so they had to take it off for the course. So I mean, that's how Sig comes from factory. Like, their quality control on a lot of things is not great. Like their Sig Spear, when it came out, like we got it in our store and the barrel was crooked. So again, I like Sig, but their quality control is absolute trash. So if you get a Sig, you really need to put some rounds to it, make sure it works, like test everything on it, because their quality control is trash. Now, a safe bet with Sig is going to be the 226 series. Like, that's one of their most iconic guns. I really enjoy it. This is a 226 Legion. My dog wants up here. I got Loki here. So this is a 226 Legion. This is the SAO model. I like the single action only. That's what SAO stands for, single action only. So it's got a safety, no decocker, and that's how I like running it. But yeah, 226 is a safe bet, just not a great first time gun because they're also pretty expensive. If you can afford it, go for it. A little bit heavier to carry, like not something I want to conceal carry, but very nice gun. Their 320, I think, is a very cool gun, and you can do so much with this. Like, this really opened the door for like fully modding out a pistol. I'm going to show one here to you that's more or less no longer a Sig. Like the only thing Sig on this pistol is the trigger and the fire control unit. The frame is Wilson Combat, the slide is a Norso, barrel's different, comp's different. Like this is no longer a Sig. This is basically a 320 build off of their fire control unit because it just pops in and out of guns. So if you have issues with something like this, you can no longer basically call it a Sig because 95% of the gun is not Sig. I mean, the main component's the fire control unit, obviously, but it's no longer a Sig. It's just a build gun, and while I think they're cool, they're not practical for first-time beginners because you never know what kind of issues you're going to run into with a gun that has 20 different manufacturers' parts on it. So yeah, I think these are cool, and I got this one for a decent deal. You can actually find these Sig builds for pretty decent deals as long as people aren't smoking crack, but yeah, I do like it. I've enjoyed shooting it. My girlfriend's calling me. She'll have to wait just a second. And yeah, I mean, those are kind of my top 5 brands. Again, Sig I was debating, but they are a cool gun. They wouldn't be my first choice recommendation because their quality control is very bad out of the box. And again, I'm allowed to say that. I have a lot of money invested in their guns, but number 1 safe bet's Glock. If you don't like a Glock, Shadow Systems is cool. It's what I like. Smith & Wesson is a pretty affordable, good gun. HK, a little bit higher end, but also nice. And then Sig, I like them, but they have their own issues. Other brands that are worth noting that I don't necessarily have a lot of experience with or don't have a lot myself. Ruger makes cool stuff. I don't care for their 9mm as much, but I have their LCP2, which is a 380. CZ makes cool stuff. I have their 75 model, which is like their metal gun. I don't care for their P10 grips as much, but they shoot nice. Walther makes cool stuff. I just don't own any. I'd like the Q5 match, which is what Josh Brolin used in Deadpool 2. Springfield, I've shot their XDMs. Those are pretty nice. I wouldn't mind owning one. I also want to have an Echelon at some point. But the only Springfield I have is my TRP operator, which is pretty cool, 1911. But those are some of the main brands that are worth noting that I just don't have a lot of experience with, so I can't necessarily say much about them, but they sell well in our stores. So yeah, that kind of wraps it up for like my top 5 pistols that I'd maybe recommend to a beginner. If you have any questions, post them down below, and I'm sure everyone's going to have their own opinion. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for my next video.